Okay, so one of the stories that really stood out to me is a story about the country of Argentina, guys. Okay, so it was really like a catastrophic, horrific event that had occurred in Argentina in the 70s that is one of the most classic examples of how a government allows parental alienation to occur, and one of the most unjust situations that I've ever read about, studied about, and learned about. Because when I was in high school, I had an interest in, we had to pick a country and we had to do like a big report on the culture, on the society of a certain country, and I chose Argentina. And just because I found it to be fascinating. So some of the fundamentals about Argentina was that, in fact, after World War II, many of the soldiers in the German army and other Europeans that wanted to escape the war fled to Argentina. And so the genetic change in Argentina, specifically in South American countries, is that there's a lot of influence in Italian and French descendancy because of the mingling with the Argentinians or Argentine. And that occurred after World War II when so many people fled to that country in escaping the devastation of what had occurred. And remember, Russia came down and like rained terror on the Germans. So it was get out of, get out of the country time. So they fled to Argentina. It was a very common thing, very well known historical fact, right? So bringing it back to the topic that I wanted to talk about, 30,000 people disappeared in Argentina's dirty war. And it's really quite beautiful because there's a holiday that happens in Buenos Aires every year. Um, Plaza del Plaza de Mayo might look like a place to check out monuments or stop for a relaxing text. I'm referring to an article. But each Thursday, one of Argentina's most famous public squares fills with women wearing white scarves and holding signs covering with names. They're the mothers and grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo, and they are there to bring attention to something that threw their lives into tragedy and chaos during the 1970s, the kidnapping of their children and grandchildren by Argentina's brutal military dictatorship. Okay, so for decades, the women have been advocating for answers about what happened to their loved ones. And it's a question shared by families of up to 30,000 people that had disappeared between like the ages of 15 and 30. Okay, so how insane is that? I mean, it says 30,000 people, but let's be honest, guys, government will do whatever they can to suppress the truth. So that number is probably higher than that. But that's what's reported in some of the historical data. You know, it's really insane to me that so many lives were affected by this, is the aftermath of war. But the government basically exploited these families. These children were taken, and so little explanation was given about the devastation of what had occurred by the stolen children of Argentina. And this is a third world country that's had economic collapse and government corruption reoccurring in the last 40 years, which has prevented it from having a good economic uprising or consistent economic achievement. So it's really quite interesting because you can trace back to some of the government corruption and other occurrences that happened that led to this. But it's mind blowing to me. It's absolutely horrific to think that 30,000 people were taken and basically sold and captured, killed, thrown out to sea. I mean, it was just like catastrophic. Imagine what this country went through. This is something that will never ever stop echoing in their minds, because if we don't talk about the history, if we don't look into what corruption is actually occurring in our modern government today, it will continue. History, if not revealed, will repeat itself. We can't erase it. Okay? It's super important that people take a real look at what's going on with families and courts all over the world. I have a story from a woman in New Zealand. It's a crazy story, guys, that I'll be reporting on for the channel and talking about how this has happened, what has happened to her and her 5 children. It's unbelievable, the things that families are going through, and that governments are allowing children to be trafficked and used as a means to get money for the legal system, for the family court system. This is not just Alabama or the United States. This is all over the world, guys. It's a big deal. Dating back to the 1970s, when Argentina had 30,000 children taken from their families. What? How is this even possible? Their children were sold. That it's unbelievable, the child trafficking that's going on. And it's so important to me as an alienated mom that's been kept from her kids so that my ex could, pay a judge and fill her pockets with money and make my life difficult and try to crush my spirit and hold me back in life. But it's so devastating because I'm not the only one. Like, there's just so many children that have suffered, not just mine, other families. And we can promote positive change. We have to start with knowledge, education, awareness, intervention. And, it's just so important because our children are going to go through this, and their children. And right now, it's like 50% of families in America deal with parental alienation. What happens if that becomes 80%, 90%, 100% as the divorce rate increases? We don't want to see that happen, right? Right. So I just wanted to share the story about Argentina because, one, I am a huge fan of history, cultural diversity is something I like to learn a lot about. As one day I will travel the whole world and learn all about many cultures. I've never traveled much, so it's definitely on the bucket list. And I hope to protest all over the world, all over the country, with other parental rights activists and make a real impact, guys, and bring awareness and bring knowledge to this controversial topic and vlog it all here for you on YouTube. So yeah, it's just really truly something that I will be passionate about for the rest of my life. So I hope you enjoyed this story. Go do some research on what happened in Argentina. It's more than I can even talk about. There's just so much. It's unreal what these poor people had gone through. It's it's horrific. And so I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. It's an excellent example of parental alienation, and it's sad, and it's time for change. All people need to be aware of what's really going on, because it's our children that are affected, and their children will be affected, and your children will be affected if they ever get divorced. Okay? You don't want to have to look at paying several hundreds of thousands of dollars just to see your grandkids, right? Right. Think about it.